Story 1. This spine-chilling tale dates back to my 13th year, an experience that forever instilled in me a fear of the dark. It serves as a constant reminder, preventing me from venturing into cellars, crawl spaces, basements, or any such dim and damp spaces. To fully comprehend my encounter, some background information is necessary. Following our mother's remarriage to a man I'll refer to as Dave, my brother Eric and I were uprooted to a different state, far away from our extended family. Prior to their marriage, a violent incident unfolded between Dave and our father, resulting in Dave being stabbed and our father shooting him in self-defense. Thankfully, the gun was loaded with buckshot, acting more like a scattergun than conventional bullets. However, this event set the stage for the events that would follow. They discovered a 2-story house in Virginia nestled near a state park. They claimed to have gotten a remarkable deal on it, as it was situated deep within the secluded backwoods, far from the prying eyes of civilization. Eric and I had yet to lay eyes on this abode, as we were living with our grandmother and attending school until the move was complete. I resented the idea of going, harboring strong dislike for the man our mother had married. Yet, being a child, my protests fell on deaf ears. The day of our departure arrived, and true to form, I threw a fit of resistance. I despised this man, and the thought of living under his roof filled me with dread. We embarked on a 3-hour journey to our new home, and upon arrival, my brother and I finally beheld the fabled house. It stood tall, 2 stories in height, with the basement occupying the lower level and the main living area above. Little did we realize at that moment that our mother's description of it being away from everything and everybody meant it was nestled in the heart of the remote boondocks. Situated 5 miles away from the main road, the house was shrouded by a dense forest, reinforcing the seclusion it offered. The layout of the house is crucial to understanding the events that unfolded. The basement encompassed the entire lower floor, accessible through a single entrance adorned with small windows all around. Ascending a grand set of wooden steps would bring you to a wraparound porch. Positioned in front, at the top of the steps, stood 2 large white French doors, serving as the main entrance. Stepping through the front doors led you into the dining room, where you had the option to proceed straight into the kitchen or descend a step into the hallway. This hallway provided access to the only bedroom, the basement door, and the back door. Alternatively, you could turn right into the living room, while my mom and Dave's room sat to the side. Through an archway, one could reach my room on the left, with Eric's room located on the right. The house boasted a wraparound porch, and standing anywhere on it, our windows were at eye level, granting views of the dense forest that enveloped us. The first incident I experienced in our new home occurred approximately a month after our move. It was late at night, everyone tucked away in bed, while I indulged in video games and music. Heavy blinds adorned my window, shielding me from the outside world. As the clock neared 1 a.m., drowsiness began to creep over me, prompting me to switch off my electronics and settle into bed. Silence blanketed the room, save for the distant chirping of crickets. As I drifted closer to slumber, a sound disrupted the tranquility. I forced my eyes open, wondering if it was a figment of my imagination. Then it happened again, 3 distinct thuds, reminiscent of boots pacing back and forth on the back porch. My heart pounded in my chest, terror gripping me tightly. Frozen with fear, I couldn't muster the courage to move. The footfalls abruptly ceased, only to be replaced by an eerie stillness. Seconds stretched into minutes as I lay there, trembling and vulnerable. Then, out of the silence, a chilling whisper pierced the air. "Christina," it murmured, a voice that seemed both human and otherworldly, a strange amalgamation of a man's voice tinged with an unnatural growl. The sensation sent shivers down my spine, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. At that moment, I mustered every ounce of bravery and threw off my covers. With my bedroom door ajar, I could see my brother peacefully slumbering in his bed. The tapping on my window persisted, growing louder and more insistent. Fear consumed me, propelling me to race towards my mother and Dave's room for solace and protection. I banged on their door, my voice trembling as I screamed for them to wake up. Startled and groggy, they emerged, their eyes heavy with sleep, demanding to know what was happening. In a panic, my words spilled out, conveying the desperate truth that someone was trying to breach my window. Dave, armed with a flashlight, braved the darkness and ventured to the back door, while I sought refuge with my mother. Time stretched into eternity as we anxiously awaited his return. When he finally reappeared, he reported that there was no trace of anyone or anything outside, no footprints or signs of intrusion. Despite the absence of evidence, I remained petrified, unable to find solace in slumber that night. The following unsettling incident did not befall me but rather my younger brother, Eric. He was only 7 years old when my mother insisted he sleep alone in his room at night. I, out of concern and to offer some semblance of comfort, left my door open as an invitation for him to seek refuge if needed. Little did we know what horrors awaited him. On one particular night, we followed our usual routine and settled into bed. Eric recounted his experience, detailing how he was on the precipice of sleep when he heard a noise at his window. Given the hot August weather, he had lifted the window slightly to invite a much-needed breeze into his room. He assumed it was an animal outside but was quickly proven wrong when he looked up. To his horror, he came face to face with a man's visage, but it was distorted, yellow eyes glowing eerily in the darkness. A scream of pure terror erupted from him as he bolted from his room, seeking refuge in our mother and Dave's quarters. Fueled by concern and armed with a flashlight, Dave once again embarked on a search for the mysterious intruder, only to return empty-handed. From that night onward, my brother refused to set foot in his room, seeking solace in the familiarity and perceived safety of my presence. Months drifted by, and the next eerie encounter unfolded when Eric and I returned home from school to an empty house. Our mother and Dave had ventured out and would return later than anticipated. Using my key, I let us in, and Eric settled himself in front of the television in the living room. Meanwhile, I took on the responsibility of doing our laundry, noticing that our mother had fallen behind on the task. Carrying a heap of laundry in my arms, I made my way to the basement. However, as I opened the basement door and flicked the light switch, nothing happened. Left with only the feeble sunlight filtering through the windows, I cautiously descended the wooden steps, gripping the railing tightly as I navigated the darkness. Once at the bottom, I fumbled for the light switches, eventually managing to bathe the basement in a welcoming glow. As I began sorting through the laundry, an acrid stench assaulted my nostrils, a combination of decaying meat and smoke. It was a nauseating odor that made my stomach churn. My senses heightened, and I scanned the basement, searching for the source of the putrid smell. In the corner, tucked away in the shadows, I caught sight of something that sent a jolt of terror through my veins. At first, I mistook it for a fallen animal, perhaps one that had slipped through the old and blocked coal chute. But as I moved closer, my eyes widened in horror. There, amidst the gloom, was a child, an apparition crawling towards me, its arms outstretched. A mixture of disbelief and fear gripped me, and I stumbled backward, falling to the ground. The child continued its relentless advance, reaching out to grab hold of my pant leg. I kicked and screamed in sheer panic, my mind filled with a paralyzing certainty that this was the end. It was then that I heard my brother's voice, distant yet unmistakable, echoing from the stairs. "Hey, Chris, are you okay?" he called out, his words cutting through the terror. Opening my eyes, I found myself alone in the basement, save for the lingering touch of the child's hand imprinted on my jeans. Without a second thought, I scrambled to my feet and raced up the stairs, dragging my bewildered brother along with me. As we reached the top, I slammed the basement door shut, locking away the horrors that lurked within. Trembling and breathless, I tried to convey to my mother and Dave what had transpired, but they remained skeptical, dismissing our claims as figments of overactive imaginations. Days turned into weeks, and the oppressive atmosphere in that house weighed heavily on our souls. One afternoon, our mother, visibly shaken, confided in us about an unsettling encounter she had experienced. Engaged in her usual cleaning routine, she heard the distinct sound of a child's laughter resonating through the house. Assuming it was my brother and me playing hooky from school, she stormed into the kitchen, only to be greeted by a sight that defied explanation. Standing there, a little girl dressed in a blue frock, clutching a teddy bear, appeared before her eyes. Frozen in disbelief, my mother watched as the child lifted her arm, pointing a small finger directly at her. "It's coming for you," the spectral girl whispered, her voice carrying a haunting warning. In an instant, she vanished, leaving my mother trembling and seeking refuge in the barn until Dave returned. It was in that moment of vulnerability that she finally acknowledged the truth of our experiences, apologizing for doubting us all along. Story 2. I live in a small town in Alberta, Canada. This happened last summer when I went on a day hike by myself. I decided to explore a trail that had been recommended to me by my friends. Little did I know that this hike would end up the way it did. I parked my car at the front of the trail. It was just a day hike, nothing overnight, so all I had was a small backpack that was mostly filled with water. I also had a lunch and a raincoat just in case. I figured if anything else went wrong, then I could get back to my car within a few hours. The trail seemed less traveled. It was surrounded by tall trees and thick underbrush. It was the perfect setting for a day hike. I laced up my boots, adjusted my backpack, and set off on the path. It was not the most remote trail I had ever done, but once I got in there, it felt like I was miles away from civilization. The noise from the road was basically gone after 10 minutes of walking. The air was fresh and crisp as I ventured deeper into the wilderness. After hiking for a while, I noticed something out of the ordinary. It was in the middle of the trail and it looked like some kind of rock, but something looked different about it. I stood over it for a few seconds, not knowing what it was. I bent over and picked it up because I was curious. As soon as I lifted it up, I could tell it was not a rock because it was too light. As I examined it, I soon realized that I was holding a piece of a skull, and I was pretty sure it was from a human. I knew what deer and bear skulls looked like, and this wasn't one of them. I quickly put it down, not wanting to disturb the scene any more than I already had. I turned around and started walking back quickly. My hike was over. I had to report what I found. As soon as I reached my car, I pulled out my phone to check if I had service. I did. I called the police and told them everything. I waited there in my car until they arrived. When they did, I showed them where to find it. As it turned out, that piece was indeed human. It belonged to a hiker who went missing the year before. The hiker was already confirmed dead because other bone fragments had been found already. They were scattered about the area by animals, so it's unlikely that the entirety of the remains will ever be recovered. This discovery was a dark reminder of what can happen out there in the wilderness. Nobody knows what the cause of death was for this individual, but foul play was never suspected. The authorities conducted a thorough investigation into the hiker's disappearance and subsequent death. They combed through the surrounding area, searching for any additional evidence or clues. It was a painstaking process, but they were determined to shed light on the mysterious circumstances surrounding the hiker's fate. As news of the discovery spread throughout the community, a sense of unease settled over the town. People became more cautious when venturing into the wilderness, aware that danger could lurk in the seemingly peaceful forests. Rumors and speculations circulated, fueling the already growing fear. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation seemed to hit a dead end. Despite their efforts, the authorities were unable to uncover any significant leads or suspects. The case slowly faded from public attention, but for those directly affected, the wounds remained fresh and the questions unanswered. Meanwhile, the small town underwent a subtle transformation. The once bustling trails and parks became deserted, as fear kept residents and visitors at bay. Once popular among hikers and nature enthusiasts, the trail I had ventured upon now lay abandoned and forgotten. It seemed as if the forest itself was guarding the dark secret, its eerie silence amplifying the sense of foreboding that hung in the air. Curiosity gnawed at me, compelling me to dig deeper into the mysterious circumstances surrounding the hiker's demise. Unable to shake off the unsettling encounter, I began researching local legends and tales of strange occurrences in the area. Stories emerged of lost souls, vengeful spirits, and inexplicable phenomena that plagued those who dared to trek too far into the wilderness. Determined to uncover the truth, I reached out to the town's elderly residents, hoping they held fragments of forgotten knowledge. With hesitant voices and cautious glances, they shared whispered accounts of unexplained disappearances, eerie sightings, and an ancient curse that clung to the land like a shadow. One particular tale stood out among the rest, a legend of a reclusive hermit who had once inhabited a secluded cabin deep within the heart of the forest. According to the story, he had delved into forbidden rituals and made a pact with an otherworldly entity. The townsfolk believed that his dark actions had unleashed a malevolent force that now haunted the woods, preying on unsuspecting souls. Intrigued and filled with a mix of fascination and trepidation, I embarked on a personal quest to uncover the truth behind the legend. Armed with a notebook, a camera, and an unwavering determination, I delved into the forbidden depths of the forest, retracing the steps of the ill-fated hiker. As I ventured further into the wilderness, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. Shadows danced among the trees, and an unnatural chill seeped into my bones. Strange sounds echoed through the dense foliage, evoking a sense of being watched by unseen eyes. Days turned into weeks as I meticulously scoured the area for any remnants of the hermit's cabin. Guided by obscure clues and fragments of local folklore, I pressed forward, consumed by an insatiable curiosity that bordered on obsession. Finally, on the brink of abandoning my search, I stumbled upon an overgrown path concealed beneath a thick blanket of moss and fallen leaves. Intrigued by the possibility that it might lead to the elusive cabin, I cautiously followed its winding course, mindful of every step I took. The path grew narrower, and the trees seemed to close in around me, as if nature itself conspired to deter my progress. Just as I considered turning back, I caught sight of a dilapidated structure peeking through the undergrowth, a decaying cabin cloaked in an aura of forgotten secrets. With bated breath, I approached the cabin, its weathered walls groaning in protest. The air grew heavy with an otherworldly presence, and a sense of trepidation sent shivers down my spine. As I pushed open the creaking door, an overwhelming wave of darkness engulfed me, as if the cabin held its breath, waiting to reveal its long-held secrets. Inside, I found remnants of a twisted existence, the remains of forbidden rituals, arcane symbols etched into the walls, and tethered journals filled with the hermit's deranged ramblings. It became apparent that the hiker had unwittingly stumbled upon this cursed sanctuary, meeting a tragic end in the process. Piece by piece, I reconstructed the hermit's descent into madness, uncovering a tale of desperation, obsession, and a thirst for forbidden knowledge. It was a story that blurred the line between reality and nightmare, revealing the true nature of the malevolent force that had haunted the forest for centuries. As I pieced together the hermit's final days, a chilling realization washed over me like an icy wave. The hermit's rituals had not only summoned the malevolent force, but bound his own soul to the dark entity. In his desperate attempt to gain power and transcendence, he had become a vessel for the very evil he sought to control. The hiker, unknowingly intruding upon this unholy nexus, had become ensnared in a battle between light and darkness. His demise was not a mere accident but a deliberate act orchestrated by the malevolent force, ensuring its secrets remained buried within the forest's depths. Driven by a mix of curiosity and a desire to protect others from the horrors that lurked within, I delved even deeper into the hermit's journals, unraveling cryptic passages and deciphering the true nature of the curse. The more I discovered, the more entangled I became in the web of darkness that enshrouded the forest. Whispers in the wind seemed to guide my every move as I ventured back into the heart of the wilderness. Armed with newfound knowledge and an unyielding determination, I embarked on a perilous journey to break the curse and release the tortured souls trapped within its clutches. Night after night, I performed ancient rites, invoking ancient powers and reciting incantations passed down through generations. The forest responded, its twisted trees groaning and contorting as if in agony. Shadows danced in macabre patterns, and the air crackled with an eerie energy. But the malevolent force fought back, its presence growing stronger and more relentless. It sent forth apparitions and phantoms to torment me, distorting reality and testing the limits of my sanity. I endured sleepless nights haunted by nightmares that blurred the lines between the physical and the ethereal. Yet I refused to yield. With every ounce of my being, I persisted, fueled by the belief that light could prevail over darkness. The forest became my battleground, its ancient secrets echoing through my every step as I confronted the malevolent force head-on. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months as the struggle intensified. Each encounter with the malevolent force brought me closer to the brink of despair, but I clung to the flickering flame of hope within my heart. And then, one fateful night, as the moon reached its zenith, the culmination of my efforts unfolded before my eyes. A blinding burst of light erupted from within the forest, banishing the darkness that had plagued the land for centuries. In that moment, I felt a surge of energy course through me, as if the very essence of the forest had been cleansed. The curse had been broken, the hermit's soul finally finding release, and the hiker's spirit freed from its eternal torment. With a heavy heart and a newfound sense of peace, I emerged from the forest, forever changed by the horrors I had witnessed. A small town in Alberta, Canada would never be the same, its residents forever marked by the presence of the malevolent force that had now been vanquished. But as I returned to the embrace of civilization, a nagging thought lingered in the recesses of my mind. I wondered if the dark entity truly lay defeated or if it was merely biding its time, waiting for another unwitting soul to stumble upon its cursed domain. Only time would reveal the answer, but one thing was certain: I would forever bear the scars of my journey into the heart of darkness, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the enduring battle between light and shadow. Story 3. My husband George and I were fortunate enough to own a charming cottage on the shores of a secluded lake. It had been just a few months since we bought it, and this was our second visit to the place. Nestled amidst trees, the cottage stood at the end of a long dirt road, offering seclusion and tranquility. There were no neighbors for miles, and the lake felt almost private despite being technically public land. The cottage itself had a rustic charm, with weathered wooden walls exuding a timeless appeal. Inside, it was sparsely furnished, with a single sofa in the living room area. The kitchen boasted an old propane-powered refrigerator, and an oven and stove fueled by the same. We tried to minimize our usage of the appliances, as we were conscious of conserving resources. Apart from solar panels on the roof, there was no electricity, emphasizing our retreat from the modern world. Large windows at the back of the cottage provided breathtaking views of the lake and surrounding scenery. We cherished the solitude offered by this idyllic getaway. Having retired recently, I was looking forward to spending extended periods here, while George still worked part-time. The plan was to escape to this haven whenever possible, relishing every minute of our time spent in this serene setting. However, one morning, as we sat on the porch sipping our coffee, George's eyes fixated on an unfamiliar figure in a small boat drifting along the water. It was an odd sight, as we had never encountered any other boaters on the lake before. Given its secluded nature, we weren't expecting any company. Trying to be friendly, we waved at the man, who remained motionless and unresponsive, staring straight ahead in our direction. It struck us as rude, but we brushed it off and continued with our day. To our surprise, the next day, the mysterious man appeared again, sitting in the same small boat in a seemingly frozen position just off the shore. His gaze remained fixed upon our cottage. His continued presence unnerved us, though we tried to dismiss it as an overreaction. It was difficult to make sense of his purpose, as he neither seemed to be fishing nor engaged in any apparent activity. We pondered where he went at night and wondered if he had a nearby residence. As twilight descended, George and I found ourselves drawn to the window, compelled to keep an eye on the man. Even in the almost complete darkness, he remained in his boat. The intensity of his gaze unsettled us, and we couldn't shake the notion that he might be there all night, watching our cottage. Fear began to grip us, and we felt an urgent need to investigate. Armed only with a flashlight, George ventured out into the night, his footsteps echoing softly on the wooden dock. I stayed back, initially watching from a distance. As the beam of light swept across the water's surface, it illuminated the man, revealing his face in an eerie glow. The intensity of his gaze only deepened our unease. Overwhelmed with fear, I grabbed George's arm, and without uttering a word, we retreated to the safety of the cottage. At that moment, we knew it was time to leave. That night, sleep eluded us as we grappled with our decision. The next morning, we packed our belongings, eager to escape the haunting presence of the man in the boat. Even as we departed, he remained there, a silent and enigmatic figure. Back in the city, we had a lengthy discussion about what had transpired. We contacted the police, but they informed us that the man's presence alone was not illegal, while we thought it might constitute stalking or harassment, proving it would be challenging. In the end, we decided to continue visiting our cottage but took precautions by purchasing a gun for protection. It seemed like a sensible choice, considering the remote location and the potential dangers posed by wildlife, including bears. 2 years have passed since that unsettling encounter, and we haven't seen the man again, despite spending nearly half of each year at the cottage. We made a point to ask our neighbors about him, but none of them knew who he was or had experienced anything similar. The mystery surrounding his presence remains unsolved, leaving us with unanswered questions about his intentions and motives. Story 4. When I was around 6 or 7 years old, our family made what was then a regular trip to visit my uncle on his sprawling farm. However, this particular visit held a special excitement because my favorite cousin, Jess, who was 6 months older than me, would be joining us. Whenever Jess and I were together, we became partners in crime, exploring every nook and cranny of my uncle's land, the woods and the surrounding areas. We were all quite familiar with my uncle's property, spending countless hours on long walks and exhilarating rides on his four-wheeler, delving into the mysteries that nature had to offer. Most of these adventures were uneventful, allowing us to create cherished memories. However, everything changed on that fateful day in June, during the early 90s, when summer was in full swing and our much anticipated 4th of July party was yet to come. Jess and I set off on foot, embarking on a leisurely stroll down the familiar dirt road that snaked away from my uncle's place. Just a short distance away, we encountered a small creek that held a special place in our hearts. On days of heavy rain, the creek would swell and wash out the bridge, but on that particular day, it was bone dry, revealing a sandy creek bed and an abundance of hidden treasures. It was a rock collector's dream, a place where we often found interesting rocks, ancient arrowheads, and once even stumbled upon the remains of a half-finished hatchet head. So there we were, walking along that well-trodden creek bed, our young voices intertwined in lively conversation about anything and everything. Suddenly, my gaze fixated on something massive resting on the bank, almost parallel to our path. It took a moment for my mind to process what I was seeing, and then it hit me like a bolt of lightning. We were face to face with an awe-inspiring sight, a large, imposing black bear. In that instant, time seemed to freeze as I stood motionless, a mixture of fear and all surging through my veins. Instinctively, I grabbed Jess's hand, my trembling fingers pointing at the colossal creature before us. The realization of our predicament settled in, and an unspoken understanding passed between us. We had to escape, to get out of harm's way. Jess clamped her hand tightly over her mouth, stifling any sounds that might betray our presence, while I took the lead, pulling her along with an iron grip on her hand. With every ounce of strength and adrenaline-fueled determination, we sprinted as if our lives depended on it. The world around us became a blur as we raced, desperately seeking safety. Only when we were finally out of the creek, back on the familiar road, did we allow ourselves to slow down, panting heavily, our hearts pounding in our chests. We locked eyes, sweat-soaked and breathless, and a mixture of relief and sheer disbelief washed over us. We burst into uncontrollable laughter, a release of tension that threatened to consume us. It was a laughter born out of survival, a cathartic response to the intense emotions we had experienced. If we hadn't laughed, we knew the alternative would have been tears of terror. Gathering our composure, we made our way back home, a newfound appreciation for the fragility of life etched into our young minds. We eagerly shared the details of our harrowing encounter with the bear with our parents, hoping for validation and support. Yet, to our dismay, they couldn't bring themselves to believe that we had truly come face to face with such a formidable creature. They attributed it to our vivid imaginations, despite our insistence that what we saw was real. Disheartened by their skepticism, Jess and I realized that our encounter would forever remain our shared secret, a testament to our bravery and resilience. As time went on, we continued to visit my uncle's farm, exploring the familiar landscapes that held both beauty and hidden dangers. We grew older, our childhood adventures giving way to the responsibilities and challenges of adulthood. Yet, the memory of that encounter with the bear remained etched in our minds, a symbol of our shared bond and the strength we discovered within ourselves that day. Years passed, and life took us on different paths. Jess and I pursued separate careers, started families of our own, and embarked on our individual journeys. However, the connection forged during our childhood escapades never waned. We remained confidants, always ready to reminisce about that pivotal moment in our lives. One summer, as adults, we found ourselves back at my uncle's farm, standing on the same dirt road that had led us to the creek all those years ago. Although we were no longer the carefree children we once were, the anticipation and nostalgia filled the air, with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. We decided to retrace our steps and revisit the site of our encounter with the bear. As we made our way along the creek bed, the memories came rushing back, intertwining with the sights and sounds of the present. We marveled at the lush vegetation that had thrived over the years, obscuring the path we once followed. The silence was broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant songs of birds. Reaching the spot where we had stood frozen in fear, we paused, gazing at the tranquil surroundings. It was a moment of reflection, a reminder of how far we had come and the strength we had discovered within ourselves. We realized that the bear, in its majesty and power, had imparted upon us a valuable lesson: the importance of facing our fears head-on and finding the courage to forge ahead, even in the face of adversity. Standing there, hand in hand once again, we shared a silent acknowledgement of the profound impact that single encounter had on our lives. The bear had become a symbol of resilience, reminding us of the unyielding spirit that resided within each of us. As we turned to leave, a sense of closure washed over us. Our childhood encounter with the bear had shaped us into the individuals we had become. It had taught us to trust our instincts, to find strength in unity, and to appreciate the fragile beauty of life. With newfound gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose, we left the creek behind, carrying the memory of our extraordinary childhood adventure and the resilient spirit of the bear within our hearts. And though our paths would continue to diverge, we knew that the bond forged that day would forever unite us, reminding us of the extraordinary journeys we had shared and the strength that lay within us, waiting to be awakened when faced with life's unforeseen challenges.